To this evening's Public Service Committee meeting. I'd like to remind you that to vote, a hand must be raised like so if you wish to vote. But if you wish to speak, if you could raise the hand icon, which is at the bottom of the participant list on the laptop, or hover over the name on an iPad. Could members keep themselves muted unless speaking, to keep background noise to a minimum, and members of the public will be muted after they've spoken at item 1, and they cannot participate in any other parts of the agenda. So moving on to agenda item 1, public participation. Do I have anybody who would wish to speak, please?
Chairman, you've had requests from both Mr. Berry and also from Mr. Byrne to speak this evening.
Right, who would like to go first? Shall we take Leo first, please?
Thank you. The question that I have relates to parking restrictions. Recently, utilities had coned off an area in Ship Street where there is a pending and hopefully a quickly to be installed TRO to carry out maintenance work. During the process, the street was coned off and the proceedings were to take place the next day, when one of the regular parkers proceeded to arrive the following day, remove the cones and park the car. Now, this was taken a little bit of by surprise by the utility workers, who appeared to have no enforcement or to take no action. And it was left to a local resident to actually contact the parkers or the driver's employer for them to come and remove the cone, to remove the car and replace the cones. Now, the issue of parking and the use of cones has been problematic and very problematic in Ship Street, and the absence of the TRO and the double yellow lines to be installed. But this has happened elsewhere where people, and in Dunnings Road, where people have just removed the cones to suit their own needs. What is the enforcement procedure whereby, shall we say, some punitive action can be taken against these abusers? And we've been to the police, we've been to Mid Sussex, but we still not find, we've still not resolved the problem as to how to, how can I say, have the value of these cones appreciated by those who clearly doesn't regard them with any value.
Thank you for your question. I'd have to take advice on that, obviously, because, but I can get back to you on that one if that's okay.
That would be very helpful. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. Frank, would you like your question?
Yes, please. Thank you, Councillor Mockford. Can the Town Council please give an update on any discussions held with retailers, Mid Sussex District Council Planning and Licensing and West Sussex County Council regarding the current and future use of the flower beds, pavement and loading bay at the various locations within the town? Thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, I will take advice on that and I will get back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? No, right. So I would like then to move on to agenda item 2, if I may. Apologies for absence, Town Clerk.
We have apologies this evening from Councillor Peacock, and we've had apologies from Councillor Scott, who's been detained at work. So if the committee are willing to accept the apologies of Councillor Scott, that just needs to be voted on. But Councillor Peacock, you're just simply noting.
Thank you, Town Clerk. And if I could at this point ask you to call the register.
Yeah, do that.
Thank you.
To the benefit of the public who are here, so the please answer present when your name is called. So Councillor Mockford.
Present.
Councillor Bennett.
Present.
Councillor Amos. I'm sure I saw him.
Yeah, present, sorry.
Thank you, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Belsey.
Present.
Councillor Favor.
Present.
Councillor Odie.
Present.
Councillor Whitaker,
Present.
Councillor Woodgate,
Present.
Councillor de Bell, sorry, Town Mayor.
Present.
And I think that's the entire committee. In addition to that, I see we also have Councillor Mrs. Farron present and Councillor, I'm sure I saw Councillor Belsey. Yes, I did. Councillor Belsey. So Councillor Belsey and Councillor Mrs. Farron are also present, but they're not members of the committee.
Thank you very much, Town Clerk. Agenda item 3, to receive the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th and the 28th of September 2020. Please, I'm going to take them both together, advising this is for accuracy. I would like to propose them. May I ask for a second?
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Woodgate. Are there any comments that wish to be made on these minutes? If not, may I ask for a show of hands then to approve them?
Carried, Chair.
Thank you. And I will sign them outside of this meeting, of course. So agenda item 4 is the chairman's update. I don't have anything really to say, but the NHS have been in touch. We do have members of the NHS with us today, but we will be hearing from those in a moment. Regarding vaccine rollout for the COVID, and this is expected to start this month. Obviously, information will be made public via the NHS. We're in a tier 2 at the moment, but numbers locally are falling, and hopefully we might be downgraded to a tier 1 soon, or upgraded even. So apart from that, nothing much to say. So I shall move on to agenda item 5, to receive members' declarations of interest. I would like to kick that off because I work at the Queen Victoria Hospital. So if we could note that. And anyone?
Chairman, same thing with me.
Councillor Favor?
Yeah.
And Councillor Mrs. Bennett?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to declare that I am one of the stakeholder governors at the Queen Victoria Hospital, and also councillor within Mid Sussex and West Sussex councils. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Having done that, let's move straight on to agenda item 6, which is the Queen Victoria Hospital proposed merger. And if I could ask for an update from our Chief Exec, Steve Jenkin, and Chairman of the Trust, Beryl, would you like to give us an update, please?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, can I say thank you for inviting us this evening. I know we know quite a few of you, but we don't know everybody. So I'm Beryl Hobson, Chair of the Trust, and I'm joined by Steve Jenkin, who's the Chief Executive. I'm going to hand you over in a moment to Steve to talk you through where we're up to in our discussions with Brighton and Western. However, I wonder if I could just say a few words by means of introduction. The first thing I'd like to say is that obviously any discussions such as these around mergers can become quite emotive. And at the moment, there is a lot of rumour and speculation, not all of it necessarily based in the current facts. So we really welcome the opportunity to give you up-to-date information. And I know many of you will have read the background to why we're in these discussions. I would like to say that Steve has conducted numerous meetings with our staff, and we're happy to talk to anybody who wants to talk to us. We've been keeping the MPs informed, and we always have met with Mims Davis. We've met her a few times since she's been in position, and we're going to be seeing her again in a few weeks' time. As I'm sure many of you know, when you talk about things like mergers or acquisitions, in such discussions, issues can sometimes become quite binary. And so you end up with one side accusing the other side of not caring about the hospital. And I'd just like to sort of put on record, really, that I'd like to reassure you that the QVH board is also passionate about the future of the hospital. And we're all committed to trying to find a course of action that makes sure the hospital and our services are sustainable and available to our patients in not just East Grinstead, but the very wide area that we cover. So I just wanted to assure you of the board's commitment to making sure we find a sustainable future for the hospital. So I'll just pass you over to Steve now, who'll talk you through some of the detail.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beryl. So just a bit of background. We've been talking to Brighton, particularly for a number of years, over a number of services, particularly around paediatric inpatient burns and adult inpatient burns, as well as something called lower limb trauma. In fact, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Brighton as long ago as October 2017. Brighton, many of you will know, have been managed by Western Sussex over the last nearly 4 years now. And we started a conversation with Western and Brighton about potentially coming together as a group. Our board met just over a year ago, in fact, the 7th of November 2019, and considered at that time an appraisal of options to ensure that QVH would remain sustainable into the long term. I'll go to the reasons why in a minute. At that meeting, the board approved that we should start a conversation with Western and Brighton, and we started conversations. NHS England's South East Regional Director came down to meet Beryl and I, as well as the Chair and Chief Executive of Western and Brighton in late January, confirmed her support for the direction of travel. Obviously, we all know then the pandemic hit us. Everybody then was working very closely together in the Sussex system. Really good working together by all partners to support patients during that time. Many of you will know that QVH was asked to become a cancer hub during that time, supporting patients across Kent, Surrey and Sussex with breast cancer, skin cancer and head and neck cancer. In early July, Western announced they were potentially going to merge with Brighton. Up to that time, they hadn't been looking at coming together formally in a merged to become one organisation. And there were 3 reasons for that. One, Brighton's historic debt had been written off. Secondly, the role of the Competition and Markets Authority had been lessened, and therefore there was not likelihood of actually the Competition and Markets Authority saying no to Brighton and Western merging. And the third reason was that Western and Brighton had been working very closely together for 3 years, and certainly during that pandemic had worked very closely, lots of staff rotating. So it made sense for them to come together and start that conversation. They said to us, would we like basically to join them in a group? We met as a board on September the 3rd of this year, and we, as a board, we reaffirmed our commitment to working in partnership with Western and Brighton, recognising that may result in a single trust. We've met again with Marianne and Alan, the Chair and Chief Exec, down at Western and Brighton on a couple of occasions. So the timescale for Western and Brighton's merger is now looking like the 1st of April 2021. Their strategic case has been approved at both board level and at NHS England's level. Their full business case, in fact, I think was going to their board meetings this week. So they're looking at coming together as one organisation, one entity from the 1st of April 2021. The earliest we could join them in one entity would be 6 months after they have formally merged. Otherwise, it would be seen as the same transaction. And so we're looking at potentially the earliest being the 1st of October 2021. So there's a lot of time for us to look at the detail going forward. Just a quick reminder of the 3 challenges that really have taken us to this position. One, we are the 2nd smallest trust in the country. We employ just around 1,000 staff, but there are lots of areas where we rely on key individuals. One example would be radiology, where Ian Francis, our clinical lead, has almost single-handedly kept the on-call going over this last 6 to 9 months. Our patient experience manager, again, when she's on leave, there is no one really to pick up on complaints. So there's lots of areas. Histopathology is another area where we really struggled since our consultant left. So lots of challenges where we rely on key individuals. So work pressures, annual leave, sickness really create a problem for us. Second area is synergies around our services. I touched on burns. We've had what they call derogation from NHS England since 2013. because we don't meet all the standards. We've got fantastic mitigation in place and we've got really good staff, but we don't meet all the standards. And those conversations have been going on pre my time at QVH with a view to inpatient burns moving down to Brighton. You may well be aware that the board took a decision last year in 2019 for paediatric inpatient burns to temporarily go away from the area, and those patients now go either to Chelmsford or to Chelsea and Westminster. Our conversations with Brighton are very much that they would like to take adult burns, but the timescale for that is at least another 2 years whilst their 3Ts phase 1 is being finished. We also know that sometimes some of our patients become quite unwell and need to be need to go out to Brighton. In fact, we had a patient, a head and neck patient, only today that became poorly and has had to be blue light out to the hospital. So there's a lot of synergy between our working already with Brighton. We have a number of SLAs in place with them, service level agreements. So that, for example, PNAT, our paediatric ward, is supported by paediatricians coming up to QVH 3 days a week. The last but not least, and is obviously the money situation. Our income has flatlined over recent years, but our costs have increased. It's really difficult as an organisation of our size to make the efficiencies that the NHS has expected year on year. And so we found it really, really difficult over the last 2 years. We've made significant deficits. And therefore, we believe to be sustainable in the future, we need to come together in a much bigger organisation. So those are the 3 main reasons, and why we believe a partnership would be ideal with Brighton and Western is, one, I think we're shaping this, we're having that conversation, we're leading it. And it means that we're taking some control of our future. We recognise that we, over this last 4 years, certainly, as part of the Sussex, what they call the SDP, which was a Sustainability and Transformation Partnership. It's now an integrated care system, that all partners have been really working very closely together over that time. And we think it's the right strategic approach that will allow us to maintain the services, but may also give us opportunities for more specialised work to come here, potentially for increasing our sleep service and for more rapid diagnostic services across not just Sussex, but Kent and Surrey as well. Clearly, we want to ensure that we continue to provide outstanding care and the excellent clinical outcomes we have. And we want to protect that and maintain that. And therefore, we want to be financially sustainable to be able to achieve that. For our staff, I think we believe that coming together with Western Brighton would provide us with the backup of a wider team, offer better opportunities for career progression, broader experience, attracting staff on a rotation basis, so particularly something like critical care. Staff could go to Brighton, experience for 3 months, their staff could come up here. But particularly the benefits of education, training and research from being part of a large teaching hospital, which clearly Brighton and Western would be. So where we're currently at is that we've agreed at our last board meeting a paper that sets out the process and the potential timetable to support a decision making on the proposed merger. So no decision has been made at this moment in time to merge. We've agreed with the paper setting out what the process will be and what the timetable will be to support that decision making. And Beryl mentioned I've had a number of staff briefing sessions, probably about 10 in August and September. The ones that have been happening over the last couple of weeks and more next week is laying out what that timetable would look like. And in essence, what we're looking at is the stakeholder engagements continue. That's internally with our own staff, but also externally. Beryl mentioned we've got a meeting with our MP next week. I've got a phone call tomorrow with our East Surrey MP. We wrote last week, in fact, to the 42 MPs across Kent, Surrey and Sussex to share with them our document around securing the long-term future of QVH, to make them aware also that there was a petition and that they may well get conversations from their constituents, so that we're opening that conversation with those MPs. So the stakeholder engagement will continue, not just with our staff, but the wider external community, including tonight. As a foundation trust, we rely on governors, council governors, and we're about to embark on elections. So people had until Monday to put themselves forward for 14 public-facing governors and 3 staff governors. Those elections will be run independently by Civico, I think used to be known as the Electoral Reform Organisation, and those elections will start on the 18th of December and will conclude on the 12th of January, and announcements will be made on the 13th of January. There will then be a period of induction and governors will join us on the 1st of February. Whilst that is going on, we'll start working on a strategic case, and we anticipate that work taking place between January and March, with board approval at the end of March, beginning of April. If the board do approve the strategic case, we'll then start on a full business case. This will be with our partners at Weston and Brighton. That will include a long-term financial management plan of at least 5 years. If the board approve that document, which will be at the end of July, beginning of August next year, we will then take that full business case to governors for their consideration. If the governors approve the process that we've gone through, we'll then submit that to NHSE in September for their approval, and the new organisation we would join on the 1st of October. That's the timer as we see it here. But one of the key points I want to make clear that at this moment in time, apart from those ongoing conversations about burns, which have been going on for quite some time, there are no changes to services planned at this moment in time. We've not had any conversations, and the board, in fact, we met as a seminar today, but we've already made it very clear that we'll only merge if it helps us to further develop and invest in our services, 2, maintain and build on our excellent record for patient experience, clinical outcomes and safety. The 3, will continue to provide service to patients from the wide area we cover. And I think we recognise from the petition, particularly, that people are very concerned about our reach into Kent, particularly. Around 35% of our activity comes from Kent, and that needs to be preserved. That we continue to deliver, 4thly, world-class research and innovation. And 5thly, that we secure the future of the hospital in East Grinstead, providing services such as the minor injuries unit for local people, as well as other local services. So our board have made that commitment. I've outlined the timeline. Just to mention the role of the governors. So the governors are, we are a foundation trust. We have a council of governors. Governors play a key role in holding the non-exec directors to account for the performance of the board and representing the views of members and the public. Most governors are elected from the foundation trust membership, and we have a membership of around 8,000. These elected governors reflect the interests of the community and represent their members when key decisions are taken at the trust. If our board concludes in the summer of next year that joining Brighton and Weston in one new single hospital trust is right for QVH, then as well as engaging the staff, we will take that decision to our council of governors for consideration. The role of the governors is to seek assurance that the board of directors has followed an appropriate process, taking account of the interest of members and of the public, and been through a thorough and comprehensive process in reaching its proposal. So that's an outline of why we're having that conversation with Weston and Brighton, the reasons for it, the process we've gone through to date, the timeline we've got, the role of the board in terms of the strategic case, the full business case, and the role of the governors. Chairman, I think that's probably covered as much as I wanted to say at this moment in time, but more than willing to take questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from anyone? Town Mayor waving at me.
I'm so sorry, I was having a struggle raising my hand. Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Stephen Barrell, for coming along and talking to us tonight. As you know, I was a public governor for a number of years, and I know that this was mooted quite a while ago to do with Brighton. Brighton have had their problems. They've been, in arrears, shall we say? And I understand that if I'm right, that in the year 19 to 20, the QVH is down around about 9 million at this time. So I can understand where we're going. I think the general concern from the constituents that I've spoken to is that the QVH is a very central part of East Grinstead. It goes back way beyond you, Steve and Beryl, way beyond me. And hopefully it's going to go forward to great uplands and everything else. I think that the major concern is that the QVH is an internationally recognised centre of excellence for what it does and for the services that it offers. And the key thing is that we don't want to lose that. When I say we, I'm sure you, as well as we in the town, our constituents, and plus for the benefit of the patients that we have, we don't want to lose that. And the concern is if Brighton are sending people up here for minor things and the specialist things are being lost to other areas like London, where they're going for treatment instead of coming here, but eventually the kind of watering down, no matter what your intentions are, no matter what our intentions are, the eventual watering down that will occur will finish up seeing East Grinstead, the Queen Victoria Hospital, become just another hospital similar to the one that was in Lingfield, that somebody says, do you know what, we can put these people into elsewhere and shut the whole thing down. That's the sort of concern that I've been listening to. And I was very pleased to hear what Beryl said and what you said about maintaining the services. You see, I've been in business, working in businesses where promises have been made with mergers and takeovers and things like that. Nestle took over a company that I used to work for, Roundtrees, and they made all sorts of promises about what they were going to do and what they were going to keep and everything else. Cadbury were taken over and all sorts of promises the same. And a few years down the line, it was all quietly brushed under the carpet. These are the concerns, and I'm sure that you've got an eye to that, Steve and Beryl. Sure. I know that you will have, but these are the current concerns that you have. What are the sort of safeguards is the question that's coming out of all this diatribe I'm throwing at you. What are the kind of safeguards that won't happen, that it will remain a centre of excellence internationally known throughout the world? Thank you.
No, Tamara, I think it was a very passionate plea, and I've heard very similar pleas from many people over this last few weeks, actually, and it's something that our board are very, very mindful of and want to maintain. So we recognise, QVH is unique. This is the fourth Queen Victoria Hospital East Grinstead's had, and this has been on this site since 1935-36, so pre the founding of the NHS even. I think you're absolutely right about its brand and its reputation. It just doesn't go within East Grinstead and Sussex. It goes much wider, and you're absolutely right, internationally as well. And we're desperate to maintain that. And I know the conversations we've had with the chair and chief exec down at Western Brighton, they recognise the strength of our brand as well. And in many respects, I think what they're saying, look, PRH and Brighton are one hospital, but actually people still know PRH is PRH. And I think QVH will maintain its name, whatever happens. So that's one thing. Secondly, I think the commissioners of our services are really very important in this. I've got conversations next week, in fact, with our Kent commissioners and with our Surrey commissioners and with specialised commissioning, because all of those commissioners are really, really important. And one of the key things I want to say is that back in October, our Sussex system lead chaired a meeting, which was to look at QVH role in the second wave of this pandemic, whether we were going to take some of the breast cancer work back. And I think he was actually quite taken aback by the strength of feeling from Kent and Surrey about the strategic importance of QVH across that wide piece. And I think the best example I can give on that is breast reconstruction. You know, we are the only hospital that provides breast reconstruction within the southeast, and despite being the second smallest trust in the country, we carry out the most number of breast reconstruction cases in England, around about 10 to 11% of all breast reconstructions carried at QVH. So I think it was not just an interesting, timely reminder for the Sussex commissioners that actually our role is really, really important. At the moment, there's a service review, a clinical services review of all the services in Sussex, being led by KPMG. And they've been really taken aback also by the strength of feeling of commissioners that wanting to uphold QVH for what it stands for and want those services to continue. And that will play out in those conversations next week. You mentioned potentially patients going up to London, and I think that's one of the concerns that I know certainly our colleagues in Kent have. And I mentioned earlier on around 35% of our activity are Kent patients. Now, you and I both know, John, if those patients went to London, probably their patient experience would be nothing like as great as ours. And that's not being critical of London services, but they are much bigger hospitals. You become a bit of a number. But also, I would imagine the tariff would be much higher. Kent would have to pay higher costs. So I know that we are incredibly passionate about the services. I've seen the petition. I've spoken to many of our frontline staff, nurses, physios, and our consultants, all want to continue providing the services we do. And hence we've made that commitment that we will only merge if we can ensure that those services that we currently provide for patients across the wider area are still supported by QVH. One of the things we may well look at is whether or not, perhaps not going out as many spoke sites in Kent, because we go out to quite a lot of spoke sites, but to see if we can consolidate at one or two hospitals in Kent and almost have what they call a super spoke, where we would actually have a lot more Kent patients just coming to a central site, but it would be our staff delivering that service. So what I'm saying to you is, look, we recognise the challenge of what we're trying to achieve. I don't think anyone can be any doubt the passion from our staff and the people of East Grinstead that they don't want things to change, and it's the board. We'll try and make sure that happens, and we're passionate about making that happen.
Thank you. I have a question.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Sorry, could I just add something else, please? Julie, thank you. I was going to say, when we talk about safeguards, Steve's already mentioned the commissioners, and I see them very much as part of the safeguards for this process in terms of they want the services to be here. I think one of the things we do need to emphasise, though, is managerially and administratively, staying where we are isn't an option. The status quo just can't continue, because we will continue to get less and less money to pay for our back office. And for example, our central bureaucracy, if you like, the NHS, still expects the same amount of information from us as they do for much, much larger hospitals that would have whole teams of people doing it. We often have one person, and we have got teams in the hospital, not just the clinical staff, but we've got our admin staff absolutely exhausted at the moment, because we've got a lot of demands, as you can imagine, added to by COVID, but there are already a lot. And that simply isn't sustainable going forward. And so when people ask me about safeguards, I have to say, yes, we are looking to make sure there are safeguards built in about services, but equally, we can't guarantee what would happen if we don't make some changes. And so I think I just wanted to flag that up as well. The status quo isn't an option at the moment.
Thank you very much, Beryl. Councillor Amos.
Thank you. I've got a few questions. Wouldn't you want to, and do correct me if I'm wrong, wouldn't you want the services to be put out London and Brighton so you can get economies of scale in each trust? Because if you're each doing quite a few services in each hospital, I can't imagine you get many of economies of scale. So as Mrs. Hobson was saying, this change may be necessary to reduce costs. Second question, will it definitely reduce costs, this proposed merger? And thirdly, I note in the document that you sent us that you said there would be no redundancies. Given the fact that I think NHS costs are probably primarily made up of labour costs, that seems a bit strange. Wouldn't you want redundancies, certainly of people in management, in order to reduce costs? And surely you don't really need that many more managers if you're going to operate as three together. So 3 questions there. Thank you.
Right, I'll try and deal with all 3. So certainly in terms of efficiencies, you know, the buying power of a very small trust is quite tiny. When you think of something like theatre consumables, which is really what we do a lot of, is as a surgical hospital. Clearly, the buying power of 3 hospital trusts coming together with a turnover of 1.2 billion, you'll be able to drive down costs quite significantly in terms of, particularly as I said, theatre consumables. You know, price of theatre gloves. We've already looked at that as 3 organisations together, including East Sussex as well. And we have made significant savings from a procurement point of view. I think there are many ways that the hospital trust working much more closely together will actually drive out some efficiencies. In terms of the full business case that will need to be put together, that will actually look at the overall costs of the organisations coming together. There'll be some transaction costs, but actually is there an opportunity for some investment? And that's one of the things particularly QVH doesn't do very well at. We've never had significant sums of money for investment. I think coming together, we will be able to put forward a case of actually investment within QVH. You mentioned redundancies. I mean, Western, when they started overseeing Brighton and have been overseeing Brighton for over 3, nearly 4 years now, they didn't go into that with a view to cutting costs, making redundancies. They actually took on Brighton and looked at the challenges that Brighton had at that time. Now, Brighton were in not just financial special measures, but were in quality special measures at that time with CQC. During that time, Brighton has come out of financial special measures, come out of quality special measures. In fact, were rated by the Care Quality Commission as rated good overall at their last inspection. And one of the initiatives that Western Sussex introduced into Brighton was an initiative called Patient First. It's a continuous improvement based on lean methodology. And we're certainly talking to a number of colleagues. In fact, our chair and Councillor Favour may well know that we've just taken on a member of staff in our site practitioner team, Kate, who worked as part of the Patient First initiative down in Brighton. And some of the efficiencies that have been made are really quite significant. And it's very much a bottom-up approach. So we would really welcome that opportunity of Patient First coming to QVH to see if we can make some more efficiencies, make sure we do things differently. So those would be key things we want to do. The bit around services and where where the services might spread out. So Brighton is going to be the major trauma centre for the region. That work is going on at the moment. Over £485 million is going into Brighton's redevelopment. Phase 1 is behind plan at the moment and is likely to finish around March 22. There are then 2 more phases. Included in that will be the new helipad, and then there'll be the major trauma centre. Now, some of the services they don't have at the moment are plastics and some of our MaxFax services. So working much more closely together, we'll be able to provide those services to Brighton to support people not having to travel into London when they're knocked off a motorbike and need limbs and head injuries put back together, that actually they'll be able to be supported in Brighton, the major trauma centre, and potentially it will be our plastic consultants that will be supporting. So I think coming together will actually provide all the services for all our patients within the region and within Sussex in those services. I'm not sure I've answered one of your questions. Come back at me, please.
About redundancy, Steve.
So redundancy, I've touched on that. We're not, at this moment in time, Western and Brighton are not planning any redundancies as part of their merger. And as I said, when they came together in a partnership 3-4 years ago, there wasn't any wholesale redundancies. Clearly, we will need to look at how, Beryl mentioned some of our back office costs. Our back office costs are quite high compared with larger trusts, and that's because, as Beryl rightly said, we still have the same reporting to do as or other organisations. So that's an area that we will look at, but that yeah, that would be something that we'll develop as part of the full business case that the boards will look at in the summer of next year. But we're not planning redundancies, no.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions. So, Councillor Whitaker, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, obviously the Queen Victoria Hospital has got a great bond with the whole town, as Steve and Beryl have identified, but also with this town council, and we're very proud of that. And you know, Steve and Beryl, you've come for quite a few years now. You know, with the communications relations you've got with the town clerk, Julie Holden. You know, our chairman tonight is a staff member, the former town mayor. Danny Favor is a staff member, so incredibly strong ties, which we're very proud of. And thank you for coming tonight. The question really is, Steve, in terms of this whole question is to me looks about sustainability and the finance of it. Pretty straight question. It follows on from probably what Councillor Amos was saying. You mentioned the deficit, and I don't want to go into figures, but effectively, is the deal, if this merger happens, that your current deficit would be wiped off?
So I don't think it will be wiped off entirely, Rex, to be honest. I think that's part of the conversation that we would have with NHS England. So my personal view is, if we get to the stage that the board approve the strategic case, the full business case will look at a 5-year, maybe even a 10-year financial plan about how we return Brighton, QVH, Weston, that we're all sustainable, that we're all in a, you know, a break-even position. That is the expectation that the NHS and the government has of all NHS trusts, is they all return to a break-even position. So we would be putting forward a case with, if Weston and Brighton do merge and we come together, we'd be putting forward a case that over a period of maybe 5 years or 10 years, that we would return to a break-even position. If some of that might be that we need some investment up front, some capital to be able to do things differently. And that's what we'd be looking at in terms of building up that full business case. So no, we wouldn't be expecting in year 1 to return QVH to a break-even position, but we would over a period of time. What I couldn't say at this moment in time, what that period of time would be, whether it would be 5 years or 10 years. It may well be that within the plan that there would be support for writing off the debt, but we're not going into this believing that will happen. We do know that Brighton's debt has been written off. I think it's about, you know, joint up working. You know, the government, the NHS England last week produced a paper around integrated care systems going forward. They're going to be promoting potential legislation change, which I think the government will be looking at probably in the spring next year, which will be very much around provider collaboratives going forward. So I think in many respects, we're probably a little bit ahead of the game here. We're trying to ensure that QVH has a vibrant and a dynamic and sustainable future, but it might be in a slightly different guise than it's been over this last, you know, few decades.
Thank you. We have a question from Councillor Mrs. Bennett.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Forgive me, I'm going to try and form it as more of a plea, really, and I guess ask Steve if he agrees with me. Perhaps that's the clever way of doing it. First of all, thank you so much, Steve and Beryl, for coming this evening. There's no doubt just how much this town loves its hospital and wants to retain it. And perhaps that's where we're getting this strong emotion from. Everybody's so proud of the history of our hospital. But as I've always said, that pioneering work that Mackinday did way back, the hospital can continue that pioneering work into the future. And that's so important, because Mackinday didn't really hold things back and look at the past. He looked to the future, and that's really important. And one of the great things about having our meetings now in this virtual world is that many of our residents can look back on and watch this via YouTube. And so it's a really good way of getting that message out to our residents, because we want to listen to our residents and we want to take their views on board, but we also want them to understand the details, and those details are really important. And at the moment, they're not fully formed. So for a resident to sign a petition or give a feeling, they're actually probably doing it a little bit too early, because they actually don't know what they're asking to save. At the moment, it's my understanding that we don't know what services we could lose, or in fact, what we could gain. And it's only until we see the big picture and fully understand what this merger means that we can then speak our mind and make decisions. And that's what we'll be doing as governors. And so that's really my plea to all of us, really, is just to take a step back and just look at the details. And let's keep this a pioneering hospital. We love our hospital. And I think that's everything I wanted to say. Would you agree with me, Steve?
I think you put it very well, Liz, to be honest. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the town has such a fond history and close association and relationship with the hospital. I saw your tweet the other night, for example, of the Christmas lights coming on. You know, those little things are just so important to local people. So I don't think we underestimate the passion. And I think, you know, neither Beryl or I were surprised that there was quite a lot of, you know, questions, a lot of anxiety. And that's why I think we've tried to have as many staff briefings as possible to keep people informed. I know we haven't got all the answers. You know, I met with our workforce team and they asked some of the same questions around, you know, back office, you know, would there be redundancies, etc. So I think the key bit for me and for Beryl, and that's why we're delighted to be here tonight, is to give as much information as possible. I don't think you can ever give you know, too much. It's just to give as much information about where we're at the moment, what we're hoping to achieve, and how we're going to get there. I know there will be a few bumps in the road along that way, and I know, you know, rightly people will challenge, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? But you're absolutely right. We need to be as open and honest and transparent about the challenges we've got, why we think our challenges will be met by joining into one organisation. But also it's about maintaining those services that are so vital, not just locally for the people here in East Grinstead, but that wider population across Kent, Surrey and Sussex. You know, we recognise the pioneering work. You know, we're already, you know, we're doing some work at the moment with our ophthalmology team about trying to get a reasonably new procedure agreed. It's not straightforward to get it approved at this moment in time. So that pioneering work is still going on, and we would want that to continue.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask Councillor Mrs. Belsey?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Steve and Beryl, very much for updating us on the proposed mergers, etc. It's just a question I have that I know we're going to be asked regarding the vaccination process that's coming into very soon now. Are the talks, is the Queen Victoria National Health Trust likely to become a vaccine hub? Are there talks that it might be carried out from the hospital? I just wondered, because I know we will be asked, if there was any update that you could give us on that.
If I gave you an update now, it would probably change by this time tomorrow, I have to say, because there were conversations going on about the 7 main hospitals in Sussex becoming hubs. But obviously the announcement yesterday by the Joint Committee for Vaccinations and Immunisation said that they need to be directing the vaccinations to the over 80s to start with, and then care home staff and care home residents. So there are ongoing conversations at the moment. I think there will be the rolling out of the vaccine next week. I think it's likely to commence down on the south coast. GPs will be involved, but at the moment the target group will be as laid out by the Joint Committee, which will be looking at care home residents, care home staff, and the over 80s. The over 80s are the priority list, a group at the moment, and then NHS staff. Now, I think I was listening to or hearing that Professor Van Tam, the Deputy Medical Officer this morning, saying that he's hoping that the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccination may well get approved before Christmas. That one is certainly much easier to handle because it can be kept in the fridge. The challenge with the Pfizer vaccination is that it has to be maintained in transport at -75 degrees and can only be moved around a number of times. Yes, I think we will be a vaccination centre. I also recognise GPs are going to have a huge role in this, as well as that there will be mass vaccination centres. So I think there will be probably one down in Brighton. There will be others around the southeast region. But I think yes, QVH will be involved, but at this time we do not know the detail. We don't know whether it will be before Christmas or after. At this moment in time, I think it may well be just after Christmas. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Last question is Councillor Steve Odie, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Steve. Thank you, Beryl, for tonight. Much appreciated. I've just got a quick question about a consultation process, really. I wasn't quite clear. Are you saying that it's just really the governors and the board of the hospital that are going to make the decision, or is it going to be put out to wider groups and stakeholders as well?
Do you want me to pick this one up, Beryl?
If you like, Steve, otherwise I'm happy to.
Well, certainly doing this.
You go first.
Okay, so building up the strategic case and the full business case, there will be communications, particularly with relevant groups. So, for example, we talked a little bit tonight about adult burns. The Mayor will know very well that there's the London and South East Burns Network. They'll be very, very heavily involved in those conversations, as will our commissioners. We won't be looking at a public consultation as such, because that's not required, but it's really important that meetings like this tonight, our MPs and our staff groups, that we keep those conversations going to ensure that people are informed of what our plans are, what the timescale is, and that's why the governors are in that role, representing the interest of the local people. Beryl, you might want to.
Yes, I was just going to add, Steve, that public consultation is usually required when you're changing services, and we're not suggesting that. That's not what this is about. This is about a managerial change, and so it won't be going out to a wider public consultation as it would if we were changing services. But as Steve said, we will be consulting with lots of people, and of course, several people in this virtual room will be involved as governors as well, and we will consult with a wide number of people anyway, and just keep people up to speed and listen to what everybody is saying to us.
Thank you, Beryl. Can I just hand over now to my Vice Chair for the vote of thanks, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd personally like to thank Steve and Beryl for their very informative report, and to I know challenging times are ahead for you all, but we fully back you and look forward to a positive future for QVH. So thank you very much for tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Thank you very much again. I'm going to now quickly move on to agenda item 7. Do not feel that you have to stay if you would like to disappear. I quite understand. So
thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Agenda item 7, police matters. If I could turn over to Sergeant Paul Voigt, who's been sitting there very patiently, to give us an update, please.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for allowing me to see you all and be able to be involved with your meeting. Yes, well, the last meeting we had seems ages ago, really. And in that time, the police have been, myself and the team have been working our butts off, really, to try and make some sort of improvement with the policing in the lovely town of East Grinstead. We've dedicated PCSOs to the town and to the surroundings, i.e. Crawley Downs, etc. These PCSOs are making I think they're making a difference. They're doing their best to be points of contact for the public. We're not changing them around. They are specifically looking after their own designated areas. There is some work going into further making sure that we have patrol plans for all our officers, that there's a standard of uniformity amongst the sections, because obviously we work sometimes 6 days on and then have 3 days off. So when we're not around, someone else to come and look after the town. So we put that into place. We've been working on a few extra projects in East Grinstead. One of them, which I have started in East Grinstead, that came across from Haywards Heath, where there was a pilot, was working to protect the most vulnerable people in the community, those that can't leave their homes. And I'm looking more at the elderly people that can't leave their homes, that have been subject to scam calls, etc. So we've started the project with Age UK and East Grinstead Primary Care Network, whereby they are getting material that can explain to these people how they cannot be victims of scam calls. And so effectively, these people that are going into the homes for those elderly people that can't leave, say they're taking meals to them or something like that, then they're providing them with stickers that can go on their phones, things that can go on their doors, extra paperwork from the police that can sort of explain to them what they can do if they think they are victims of a scam call. So we've been working on that. We had the lad that was terrorizing East Grinstead and responsible for a lot of burglaries and a lot of thefts from people. We put a lot over the summer. We put a lot of effort into that, and fortunately were able to catch him. He's still remanded in prison. I think the court case is still ongoing in relation to that. So that took a lot of our time, and it was a lovely result for us, really. And it's what we really try and do as much as possible. We are trying to have more boots on the ground in East Grinstead, more foot patrols. We've started cycle patrols as well, so that the public can see us out and about. When I go on my patrols there in East Grinstead, I find folks coming up to me and saying it's so nice to see the police around and being there to talk to, which is wonderful to hear. It's also a little bit sad that it's got to that stage in life where they're asking questions like that or telling us. But we are around every shift. There's always someone in East Grinstead. Response units are still coming across from Crawley for the more urgent calls and getting stuck in there. We are working on social media. We're trying to get the community to know that we're out there and trying to help them. It's probably better if you ask me questions and I can stop really rambling on.
Absolutely. Does anyone have any questions? No hands up.
John DeBell has one. Councillor DeBell.
Town Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you for coming along tonight, Paul. It's a parochial question, really. Last week, I live right backing onto East Court, and there was the sound of somebody roaring up and down on a quad bike, it sounded like, in the woods. And every time I went to have a look out the back and the big outdoor lights blazed, it all stopped. It seemed to be going all the way from the top end of where I live in Mindenheim Avenue into the big house that looks like King Kong lives in there, all the way back down to East Court itself. Did you get any complaints on this? Or I was going to phone 101 at the time, but in the end, we were sat out in the conservatory, which is why we could hear it so much. But did you get any complaints on that, Paul?
Well, Mr. Mayor, yes, and it's really frustrating that you say that. We did get complaints, and it's very frustrating. I'm not sure whether it's a quad bike. It may be an off-road bike, because I know that there were tyre tracks all over the field at East Court, which is very frustrating. I have got a good lead on who it may be, which we are working on tomorrow. So hopefully we'll get it sorted. It's very difficult though, because they go from A to B so quickly, and by the time you get someone there to go and look for them, they might have disappeared altogether. And so it's very frustrating. Yes, we got complaints. Yes, we have sent officers out to try and do something about it. We just were not able to catch them in the act. But I have a lead as to where it may be originating from, and we are doing some work on that tomorrow evening.
Okay. Thank you. That's very kind, Paul. Just a very quick point. I couldn't understand how the dickens they could do it when you couldn't see any lights out there. Whether they're using ultraviolet in goggles or night lights or what, I don't know.
I agree 100%. We'll get them. We'll catch them.
Bless you.
Thank you. Councillor Odey.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Paul. Very much appreciated you coming in tonight. It's great that your officers are on bikes as well. You'll not be surprised I'll say that. I think that's a great example they're setting. My question really is about the level of speeding in the town by drivers. I really wanted to sort of pick your brains on what your thoughts were with that, really, and how we can try and help educate.
It's a good question, and very frustrating, because the speeding puts people at risk, and that's not on at all, and especially in the town centre. I think with helping to educate the town, social media is a wonderful platform for that. It certainly is a way for us to get the message across to the people that may be within a certain band that want to go speeding at night. When the police see us, and when those type of incidents usually happen, it's a lot later on in the night, the evenings, perhaps the boy race is coming along. It's difficult to say. If there is a specific area within East Grinstead, at any stage you feel that there's a specific area that you want targeted, we are more than happy to do speed checks along there and advertise that we're doing the speed checks. And then if we do it on a regular basis, the message, as long as we do them and promote them via social media or the press or whatever like that, so people know it's happening as well as seeing us, that's probably about the best I can do, really. But I'm more than happy to do that. If there's a specific place or a location you want us doing it, just give us a shout, and we'll put the folks there, and we will do it, and we can do it on a weekly basis.
Do you have to involve the Sussex Road Police with that, or is that something you do?
No, we can do it ourselves.
Oh.
It's not a problem. We don't have to have the road police there.
Thank you. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it led me very nicely into the point I actually wanted to raise. So first of all, Paul, thank you again for attending and for your communications. It's greatly appreciated. For members here tonight that are not on a Twitter account, I would strongly urge you to go onto get a Twitter account, go onto Mid Sussex Police. They're very, very active, very, very informative. Both Paul and lots of his colleagues are on there, constantly posting about things that have happened in the whole of the district, but a lot in East Grinstead. So thank you, Paul, for that. It's really, really great. Paul, you probably might realise, but on attending this meeting tonight are two members, sort of leading members of what's called local action team and our Speedwatch team, which is Leo Byrne and Frank Berry. They asked some questions at the start of the meeting. They do lots of sort of speed watch sort of work, and are very, very informed and are very interested in forging links and stronger links with your team, through the local action team, and sort of sharing information. So anything you can share with them, I'm sure, would help you, and certainly they'd be very interested in that. Thank you.
It would be an absolute pleasure to do that. If they can make contact with me, or get my email address from somebody, that would be fantastic.
The town clerk, I think, can coordinate that information. Three of you on this call, and I think that would be a very worthwhile contact.
Yep, be an absolute pleasure. No worries.
Yes, Chairman, I'm obviously very happy to send the contact details for Frank and Leo through for Speedwatch. Absolutely. I'm staggered you haven't got them actually, Paul, because Speedwatch, of course, is coordinated through Stephen O'Connell, is it? Which I appreciate is Sussex Central, but it does obviously have the police contact in the first place. But I'm very happy to send you the local information so you can all talk more freely. Absolutely.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Amos, I have a question from you. I wanted to just at this point remind you that Paul is here as a prevent sergeant and not about the funding and all of that. And I am actually going to invite the PCC in June, so you can grill them then. But if you have a question for Paul regarding anything that comes under his remit as a prevent sergeant, please go ahead.
Yes, this question's not about funding at all, actually. I'd just like to say, firstly, I think there are probably some residents who wouldn't care that much about speeding, given the fact that it comes at the cost of not going after muggers and people that burgle things and stuff like that. But I would like to ask this question. Obviously, you've got these new PCSOs and police officers, and I think it's very important to tell whether or not we can see they're making a difference. And that means I think we need a target to see whether or not the police force is succeeding or failing. So I'll ask once again, because it wasn't given to me last time and the time before that, can we have a target so we can judge whether or not your police force is succeeding or failing? Because I think the public sector gets away without having these success and failure standards, something that in the private sector doesn't occur. And before anybody says, oh, you can't tell because there's changing conditions, which I admit are there, I would like to say that in the private sector, when it comes to selling products, which also deals with changing conditions, they still make targets. If people fail to make those targets, ultimately they get sacked. I'm not saying you have failed or you are failing. I'm just asking, can we have a target to assess whether or not with your new resources, you are succeeding or failing as a force? I wish you the best of luck, by the way, in succeeding.
Thank you, Charles. Paul, we have a councillor that couldn't be here tonight, Councillor Tony Scott. He did send his apologies, but he wanted me to thank you because he had a problem with parking in Queen's Road, and he walked up to the police station and he just told someone that there was horrendous parking, and whoever it was made his way down to Queen's Road, spoke to the person that was doing the horrendous parking, and it hasn't happened since. So Councillor Scott wanted to extend his congratulations and thanks via me.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, it's fine. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Any more questions from anybody? Oh, Liz, Councillor Mrs. Bennett. Sorry.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Yes, thank you, Paul. I just wanted to say how difficult it can be when crimes can happen so quickly, particularly with this sort of young chap on the bike that seems to be causing a lot of havoc. It is hard to catch up with them when they're on the move so quickly. So thank you so much for all you do. It seems as if there was a situation in town today, and I'm wondering whether you might be able to update us. Our shops have just recently opened, and we obviously want to make sure they're safe and things are going well. Is there any information that you're able to give us this evening?
Yeah, certainly. It is an ongoing investigation, so I can't disclose too much. All I can say is that there was a rumor there was a robbery, and that was not the case whatsoever. It's an incident that occurred in London and someone's lived in East Grinstead, and the police had to get involved with the case that was happening in that part of the world. There's no risk to the public or anyone, and the individual that was involved is currently in custody at the moment and being dealt with.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Are there any more questions that anyone would? Councillor Woodgate.
Councillor Amos and Councillor Whittaker have got their hands up. I don't know if that's still up from last time.
Councillor Amos?
Yes, I know it was a tough question, but could I have an answer to my question, please? Because this is a question and answer session, as councillors have said on many occasions before at these types of committee meetings. So could I have an answer, please?
Councillor Amos, I think I did point out to you that funding is not Paul's remit and targets are not Paul's remit. He is our Prevent Sergeant and is here in that capacity. Councillor Whittaker, do you have a question? No? All done. Right, well then I would like to move on. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming and helping us out and all that. And I would like to say you may go if you wish.
Super. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Bye.
Good night. Thank you. So moving swiftly on to agenda item 8, we have the Community Officer Report. Could I pass this one over to you, Town Clerk? It's about the update of the work undertaken by the Community Officer.
Yes, indeed, Chair. The report is as it is. We're obviously in a position of change at the moment, in that Jonathan Ansley has recently left the council, and the community element work of that job has now been subsumed into the new community officer, which is now part of the communities and tourism team. So so I've reported on the things that Roger's been doing while he's been in that role. At the moment, I'm acting as his line manager because we haven't filled the role of the new community and tourism manager. At the moment, obviously, we're waiting for the work to pick up again, and we'll go back through that process later or at the start of the next year. So for the time being, if anybody's got anything with regards to the community, so that's the farmers market, Speedwatch. Well, obviously not Speedwatch. You go through Frank and Leo for that. But with regards to the SID and then liaison back to those two gentlemen and the rest of that group. Anything at all that's been put in the report comes through me, and we will obviously talk with Roger about addressing it. He's looking at the safe places and getting that up and going again. He's been really busy and making an awful lot of contacts in a very short period of time, and I'm just really pleased to be able to advise that the farmers market is doing so incredibly well at the moment. It does seem to be a strange result of the pandemic that people are looking for markets to go to where perhaps markets haven't been allowed to meet, or they are now turning their hand to producing and selling things as another option with regards to making income, and long may that continue. So this might just be a short-term uplift, but hopefully not. And to be very fair, Roger's working really hard with them and using his skills on the social media and the publicity side to actually really try to give that a bit more enhancement as well. So that's welcome skills into this particular area at the moment. So it's all in the report really, Chair, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any? Are there any questions? No. Right. No, let's move on to, well, sorry, Vice Chair.
No, I was just saying no questions from anybody.
Oh, lovely, thank you. So let's move on to agenda item 9, which is the Reboot project. A brief update on the Mid Sussex District Council run antisocial behaviour correction programme. This is just to remind the committee that it is operating and having some success. It is run by Mid Sussex District Council in partnership. East Grinstead Town Council has no direct involvement. Okay, agenda item 10 is the Dementia Action Alliance. An update on the work of the Alliance this year and the plans for 2021. Again, because of this year, there has been little happening, but it's still in operation and looking to relaunch when it can get back into the community again next year. This goes hand in hand with the Safe Places project. So agenda item 11 is the West Sussex County Council Highways update. The update on the highways works, including railway approach resurfacing and pop-up cycle lanes. There has been a lot going on, so I thought I would remind everyone where the info is from West Sussex County Council and comment on the works. We have been told that Railway Approach will be resurfaced the first week of February. The team are liaising with businesses to make sure the scheme works, and it will be from 9 AM till 4:30. So that's that. And the last item on my agenda tonight, item 12, is the public art project, to advise the committee as to the public art project which will help wayfinding along the Worth Way. It's nothing to do with us really, but the town clerk is working with Elaine to see if we can get a mural to cover the Sainsbury's bins, which will be rather nice. The art trail, including several walks around East Grinstead, including Worth Way, will be implemented by Mid Sussex District Council, and it is being funded by developer money, which is good. So it leaves me with just to tell you that the next meeting of the committee is scheduled for Thursday, the 14th of January, to consider the committee's budget for 21-22. I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening, and I would like to wish you all a very, very happy Christmas with nothing drastic happening. So I'm now going to bang my gavel and say I close this meeting at 2017. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Chair.